I'm Dave of DJB Custom Guitars here in my shop, and we're going to go through an electric guitar build. As we go on, I'll explain some very specific things about the design and why. First of all, like any guitar, you start with wood selection. For this particular guitar, I'm going to be using some curly maple for the front, and I don't know if you can see much of the curl pattern in it. When it's got finish on, that just really pops out. For the back of the guitar, I'm going to be using mahogany. Typically, I like to use sapele, which looks very much like mahogany. It's got a tighter grain and it's a little bit stiffer, and it has a iridescence. So as the light shines on it, it's kind of like tiger eye, you know, the pattern changes. I love the look of it, and so that's why I use it. A lot of people ask about wood. They say, well, you know, what about the particular tone woods? What's the best for tone? And there's a big debate, obviously, about tone woods, which is the best. And that's appropriate when you're talking about acoustic guitars. When you're talking about electric guitars, the type of wood used is very insignificant for the tone. I'm not going to say it doesn't matter. It does. It has an effect on the tone. But the biggest factor for tone in your guitar is your amplifier and speaker. The next most important is the pickup that you put in your guitar, or pickups. Has the second greatest effect on your tone. The type of wood, the shape of the guitar body, how big it is, how thick it is, whether it's hollow or solid body, makes very little difference, maybe 5% of the overall tone of the instrument. So I typically pick the type of wood that has the color and grain and uniqueness that I want to put into a guitar. This particular guitar, fairly common woods, maple on the front, mahogany on the back. When it comes to tone woods in a guitar, the part of the guitar that has the biggest effect on tone is not the body, it's the neck, specifically the fretboard. One of the smallest pieces of wood in the guitar is the fretboard, and yet of all the woods in the guitar, that perhaps has the greatest effect on the tone. So in this case, I'm using Murado, which is another name for Bacote. Most woods have several different names associated with them. I'm using this wood for the color, for the grain, and it's a very hard and dense wood. So that'll tend to make the final tone of the guitar just a little bit brighter and snappier. Because I envision having the final color of the guitar kind of a warm, I may change that. I may decide to have a more orangey, reddish, or brownish. I even thought, well, maybe it should be purple. Well, we'll see. As the guitar proceeds and we get to that point, that's months down the road, and we'll decide on the color. First of all, I pick a block of wood that has the visual characteristics that I'm looking for. This one, like I said, is curly maple. I get it in large blocks that are fairly thick. Maybe you can see the curliness on the end edge a little bit better. See how it kind of ripples? It looks like water. But I get it in a thicker block, about 2 inches thick, and then I can resaw it, which means I slice it down the middle, and then I can open it up, and it's what we call book matching. The grain on one half is going to be exactly the opposite to the grain on the other half. I will go ahead and rip this one so that we have two fairly similar pieces of wood to begin with for the front of the guitar. So we're going to come over to the bandsaw to do that. So that creates two pieces that when opened up like this, like a book, you get a pattern on one side that's opposite of the one on the other. Here you can probably see that wavy water-like appearance to the grain. Now it's rough sawn. We're going to plane it to get it nice and smooth and flat, and to make the two sides even in thickness. My electric guitars, I usually like to achieve about 3/4 of an inch of wood on the front and about the same on the back. So we end up with about 1.5 inch total thickness. Typical Les Paul, a solid body Gibson Les Paul, could weigh anywhere from 10 to 16 pounds, average probably being about 12 pounds. My guitars, the techniques that I use that we'll get into, reduces that weight to about 6 pounds. Well, we're going to take these to the planer, get them smooth and flat and equivalent in thickness. Now you can really see the curly grain pattern in it now that it's nice and smooth. And in fact, we can show what it's going to look like when it has finish on it, even if I don't stain it or color it in any way. So now you can just see the ripples in that. I think it's going to look gorgeous. And that's the main thing. Who cares about how it sounds or how it plays? It just has to look good. Just kidding, obviously. So next thing is we select the template that I'm going to use for my guitar. I've got several different styles that I make. This one is the one that I'm going to be doing. We'll just kind of get a general idea of where I want the template placed. I don't think it's going to make a whole lot of difference with this because the pattern is fairly even. Okay, I like it. That's what we're going to go with. The next step will be to what we call joint the edges. This edge, we want that to be absolutely flat, and this edge, they're pretty close, but we want them to fit together absolutely perfectly so you don't hardly even notice a seam. When that's all glued up, the seam will essentially disappear. The next thing to do is the actual glue up of that. And we've got several things that we want to keep in mind when we're doing this. What pickups we're going to use, whether we're going to use a single coil like in a Stratocaster or a Telecaster, whether we're going to use P90 pickups, which are a single coil pickup, but they're larger, have a bigger wind. We have a choice of using humbucker pickups, which have 2 coils each, which, because they're wound in opposite directions, they cut out any hum, any 60-cycle hum. That's why they're called humbuckers. Like I mentioned, the 2 biggest contributors to the tone of an electric guitar are the amplifier and speaker and the pickups. So here's the difference. The humbucker pickup has got a powerful, very strong mid-range. The single coil, like in a Stratocaster, is a very thin, trebly kind of tone. The P90 pickup, which is outlined on my template here, is kind of in between. It has the bite and snap of a Stratocaster single coil, and yet it has the fullness and mid-range of a humbucker. By far my choice, my as far as what I feel, my personal opinion is the P90 is the greatest sound. It's just wonderful. Growing up with music of the 60s and 70s, Leslie West and the group Mountain, his most famous song is Mississippi Queen. You listen to that, just amazing tone. After I get this glued up, the next step is going to be to do some chambering. Now, what I mean by chambering is Right now, if we just use this with glued to the back, it'd be a solid body guitar. The wood is solid all the way through, like a Les Paul or like a Telecaster or a Stratocaster. If it were hollow, totally hollow, it would be like an acoustic guitar or like a Epiphone Casino, like the Beatles played, totally hollow inside. Mine is going to be kind of somewhere in between. So instead of being completely hollow, it's going to be chambered out where you see it in here. The top piece and the bottom piece are chambered a little differently. The bottom part is chambered out the same in both of them, but the top is quite different. And that's because the front of the guitar needs a little bit more wood in this area because I put a forearm relief. So here's one in the process of completion. You can see the forearm relief and you can see the belly cut in the back. These just add to the comfort of the guitar so that you don't have a sharp edge digging in your belly or digging into your forearm. In this particular model of guitar, I use it also for a design concept to allow a view of different types of wood. You can kind of get an idea here of the chambering. You can see it's kind of hollow. This is lined with a copper tape, which is a shielding to help reduce any hum picking up from fluorescent lights. The pickups can pick up that hum. This helps to eliminate that. Creates what they call a Faraday cage to help filter out any hum. We talked a little bit about the neck. The first step is selecting wood for the neck. I want to get something that will harmonize with this curly maple, and yet I don't want it to be the same. I like to see a variety of woods in a guitar just to add a little bit of uniqueness, and I don't like it to be boring with the same wood throughout. A lot of guitars have maple body, maple neck, or like a Stratocaster, or it can be mahogany body with a mahogany neck like a Les Paul, and to me that gets a little bit boring. So I'm going to use the curly maple for the front of the body, and this is the neck blank. I'm using what's called a bird's eye maple, and you can see in the maple little bumps like that. That's what they call the bird's eye effect. I've added a couple of longitudinal stripes down the neck. I do that for aesthetics, but also for function. It helps to strengthen the neck. The neck is going to end up being a lot stronger and stiffer. It's also going to have a truss rod. If your neck starts to have a little bit of warp to it, you can just adjust it and correct that. If somebody likes a little bit more relief in their neck, meaning they like a little bit more string clearance from the neck, or if they like less relief, they like the strings real close to the neck, then you can adjust that with the truss rod as well as the bridge. I've also added these longitudinal stripes or walnut. Here's a neck with just one stripe in it of purple heart, which is really hard, dense wood. Here's a neck with 3 stripes, ebony, the black stripes, as well as the middle stripe, which is a wood called rambutan. Rambutan is a very hard, stiff wood. It's typically used in the higher range violin bows. And some of those bows you can spend up to $10,000 just for a violin bow made of real rambutan.